gonna spend the next 7 days buried alive under 20,000 pounds of dirt. This is the scariest thing I have ever done.
All right, well, I guess it's time.
Bury me alive.
It's actually one of the main fears. As an anxiety specialist, I very often deal with people dealing with their greatest fears. The fear of being buried alive in a coffin or in anything else, or even being in an enclosed space is common, but it's not the same fear for everyone. For some people, it's the fear that they're not going to be able to breathe anymore. For other people, it's the panic. For other people, it's the tightness of the enclosed space. For other people, it might be a fear of the dark. Other people, it might be a loss of control. And for other people, it might be that feeling of just being trapped.
Oh, that was scary.
This has got to be terrifying.
Yeah, this is pretty much most people's worst fear.
Oh my gosh, that dirt is terrifying.
If you have more than one of these fears, this just compounds that level of fear. And it's interesting because if your fear is strong enough, just hearing someone else talk about it or seeing someone else go through it can cause you anxiety. Also, if you've ever watched someone being buried alive or spelunking and you feel yourself breathing a little bit heavily or having to look away or change what you're watching, this might be something that you also have. And just so you know, you can deal with it, not by burying yourself alive, by systematically, slowly desensitizing yourself to it. This one probably caused a whole bunch of anxiety for many other people, not just for Jimmy.
Let's pray it doesn't just randomly decide to break.
And obviously, this goes without saying, but yes, this is 100% real. And I'll be honest, I severely underestimated how hard this was gonna be.
It's not just difficult because of being buried alive or the fear to that. Actually, sensory deprivation, not having any information from the outside, is really difficult for us. Also, that feeling of being alone. So there's many other fears that go into this situation of being actually buried alive. Some people also don't like breathing in hot air. That in itself can cause some people a panic attack because hot air was more stale, and if you're in a cave-like situation, heading towards the fresher, cooler air was a healthier oxygen source.
Wait, what is that? I just noticed there's an unscrewed bolt on the side of my coffin.
His screws came loose in the coffin.
From the base? Are you kidding me?
Literally from the base.
Should I be concerned this wasn't screwed all the way in?
So also, depending on your level of trust in the world, your feelings of comfort when some of the things start to go wrong will increase or decrease. So if you feel that the world is generally safe and good things are going to happen, having one small point of failure, such as a screw loose, may not cause you a massive amount of anxiety. But for other people that may look at the world as a dangerous place or bad things are going to happen, even something small can trigger that anxiety response, and you can end up with a panic attack, especially when you're in a situation where you're kind of stuck and trapped. It's almost like that one screw loose is that sword of Damocles kind of falling upon you. And so your anxiety system just sends that rush of adrenaline, epinephrine, so that it keeps you safe, to get you prepared for danger. Though in this situation, having a rush of adrenaline probably is not going to help him very much.
What the heck are you doing right now?
I'm vibrating!
Ugh, these vibrations are kind of hurting my head. Why is there flowers in my hair? I'm freaking out.
And that, all of these different things, these sensations that he couldn't really understand can cause an anxiety attack, and that feeling of starting to freak out, and you could see that his eyes were a little bit more glossy in that. That is our body sending that fight or flight response to be able to handle situations that we're not really sure of. There's also that feeling of helplessness. He can't really do anything about it. Even if he sends a signal, whether his friends will listen or won't listen are not in his control. So also, that shows his level of trust in the people that are around him and in the technology that's holding him together. You really have to trust that. And a lot of people that do stunt work or dangerous work, they really have to understand what they're going through, but trust the people around them to be able to set things up, and that they're going to set things up in a way that's really responsible.
Start the tunnel right here and dig all the way into Jimmy's coffin. We have the speakers blaring noise so that he doesn't hear us digging.
I've got an idea. We'll play construction noises over the speakers so that way he doesn't hear the excavator.
Playing music, actually that's a form of torture. But it's kind of interesting because I think that one of the worst things about being in a kind of sensory deprivation situation where you're all alone, or if you were, say, in solitary confinement, that's really bad for us. It's actually damaging to our hippocampus. I think that his friends are actually really protective to him, even though they're kind of torturing him while he's in there. But being in a state of solitary confinement is actually really, really bad for us. It is one of the strongest forms of torture. We want to be with other people, we feel safe with others, and we feel caring with others. So even though his friends are kind of torturing him and bothering him, having them there is really protective to him. It is that sense of connection with the outside world, and he's not alone. For people that have been in solitary confinement for really long periods of time, for some people for decades, when they leave, one person actually said that they had difficulty recognizing faces. And that's because they hadn't been doing it. And parts of your brain that are not being activated, they start to prune themselves. We don't use that part of our brain. We start to lose it. And they had difficulty with their spatial awareness. And we found that people that are in solitary confinement all alone, the hippocampus, the part that deals with memory, spatial awareness, actually shrinks. So it's damaging to our brain to be alone for long periods of time. Truly is a horrible form of torture.
It didn't really bother me the first few days, but I just have this weird feeling someone's always staring at me, and it's starting to like kind of irritate me.
That feeling of not having privacy also can be really difficult for us, especially when we talk about like workspaces and people that work in areas where they are always being watched, or someone's always staring at them, always being judged. And for Jimmy, always being on camera, especially if you're wanting to do whatever private moments to be able to cough or make a noise and not think that someone's staring at you, that can increase our anxiety level. And whenever your anxiety level has been peaked or increased for long periods of time, it can actually stay elevated even after that main event or whatever you were going through. So if you're in a unpleasant work situation every single day, you can notice that your base level of anxiety can actually start to increase and get stuck there. They've done rat studies where they noticed that the level of fight or flight, their stress reactions, their levels to cortisol increased from being in solitary confinement also, because they have to depend on themselves because they're all alone. No one else is there. They don't have that pack security.
What?
Hi, Jimmy!
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 Hey, Jimmy, do you see us?
I see Nolan's forehead.
Yeah, it's hard to miss.
How long did it take to dig that tunnel?
Literally all night, Jimmy.
I love this bond with his friends and them being able to come in and see him and kind of join him while he's there. Probably also was that a lowering of anxiety, that feeling of safety. So a lot of people, when they're in horrible situations, but they have each other to be able to depend and rely on each other. So I can tell right away that happy feeling of suddenly feeling your friends suddenly showed up to kind of rescue you and give you some company while you're going through this moment of suffering. Now again, different personality types feel different about this. Some people would prefer to be alone when they're not feeling well, and other people like to have other people around, or at least the few that they trust around when they're not feeling good. So this would also depend on your personality type, which one would make you feel more comfortable.
I hope tomorrow's easier. It's a weird feeling. Like, I'm very tired, but for some reason I can't sleep. I don't know. I've never had this happen before. Why am I crying? I don't know.
That's really a common experience that people can have because of that, for Jimmy, because of that isolation. But for many of us, even just having it being seasonal affective disorder, the change in the amount of sunlight that we have, because he's also not getting a whole bunch of that sunlight, our body reacts completely differently. Even our circadian rhythm, the amount of time that we can sleep and not sleep, vastly changes when we don't have that natural sunlight that kind of helps let us know which time of year it is and what time is the daylight. And so because of that, it can really change the way that our hormonal levels work and also how our neurotransmitters work. You can go through periods of sadness. Now, this wouldn't be considered clinically depression because he hasn't felt it for a long enough period of time, but that feeling of a loss of motivation, your body actually, especially in difficult situations, times of stress, we don't produce as much dopamine. We can actually shut that down, which ends up making us feel kind of lethargic. But that lack of motivation is a very common feeling for people that are depressed, that things that used to bring them joy just don't bring them joy anymore. They're not releasing the same amount of neurotransmitters that they did before. And it can be difficult to kind of kickstart them. Of course, there's therapeutic ways to be able to deal with that. But I love that he showed this really honest moment of reflection of how difficult that it can be to be alone. And I think that a lot of people experience this on a daily basis. And unless you've actually gone through it, I don't think that people can really understand the emotional toll, that feeling of hopelessness, and that you want to cry, but you're not even sure really why, which makes you feel even worse because it isn't a purposeful cry. It's just this feeling of loss or unknowing that some people go through when they're feeling dysthymia, a mild depression, or an actual depression. And so this is kind of a moment of that also.
Only 2 more days of this nightmare. I don't think humans are meant to lay down for 5 days straight. I'll try to act like I'm not depressed.
They really are not. We're not made to kind of be stuck. For people that are immobilized for whatever reason, you can feel really what we used to call like stir crazy, like you want to move, but you can't. And that feeling of being kind of stuck, and for him literally stuck, but there are other people that go through that. And different personality types react differently to this kind of stimulation. There are certain personality types that have an easier time being alone or being immobilized, and for other people this can be much more difficult. And it's not that one personality type is stronger and one is just weaker, it's just different. Each person has a different set of variables of things that bother them depending on their genetics, their biology, how they were raised, traumas that they've gone through. And because of that, they're going to react to situations better or worse. And I think that we often throw a whole bunch of judgment at people because someone felt really upset and someone else is like, oh, I could totally handle that. But just because you can handle this situation doesn't mean you're going to handle another one. So we all have different tools in our toolbox. The reason that people often go to therapy or get self-help or practice or work on themselves is to gain more tools in their toolbox so they can handle more situations and be more successful and happy at them.
I don't even know what to say to them.
Jimmy, what have you been doing for fun?
Nothing. I'm in mental agony.
The thought of boredom also, not giving something to do for our brain, is not good for it either. And that often happens with situations of isolation. Studies on rodents have found that after a month of isolation, there's about a 20% reduction in the volume of neurons in the brain. So being alone, not being active, not having your brain do anything does cause an effect. You have to use something to get better at it. And our brain decides to conserve energy by not making more cells if we're not going to be using it. Our brain can atrophy just like a muscle can. And so having different toys and trinkets and things to do, even if they don't seem important, are actually important things for us to do also to keep the brain working, because whatever you don't use, you will lose.
Go eat. All right.
I don't know, I'm doing this thing where I'm crying, and I'm not 100% sure why I'm crying. Hitting 200 million with the boys was fun, but now I'm just alone and trapped in here again.
I think it's really important for people to know the emotional cost that people go through. And for Jimmy, luckily he knows that he does have people that love and care about him on the outside of this, but that feeling of being alone does really devastate us. If you know of someone that's alone, especially during the holidays, which is really difficult because people are always talking about how happy and fun the holidays are supposed to be. But if you are alone, it can be really difficult to remember to reach out. Him mentioning this and kind of sharing these really vulnerable emotional moments with people, I really commend him, because I think that it touches a lot of other people that don't feel heard or seen, or don't feel like their emotions have been understood. A lot of people, because they feel that emotions are vulnerabilities, and they're not, they're our strength, they're important, we need to listen to them, not shut them down. I think that this will hopefully allow other people to be able to show their vulnerabilities or reach out to help if they so need it. And luckily for Jimmy, he knows that this is going to end. It has an end point for him. And sometimes that's what people need. They need that little bit of hope or thought. And that's why being able to reach out, going through different tools and techniques. So if you're going through a really difficult time, that there are different helplines out there, even if you can't afford to be able to get treatment, there's help out there. You don't have to be alone.
Jimmy, how you doing?
Oh, no response. I don't know if he's alive.
Nolan, I appreciate you checking in on me and caring, but
Are you actually hanging in there? I know.
Jimmy went from being terrified to an absolute yapster, and now he's a sad boy.
I'm doing my best to talk to you guys for content, but to be honest, I have like zero desire to speak. I just want to get out of here.
For other people, if they're going through a really severe depression, that's often one of their greatest fears is that they don't know if there's going to be an end point. They don't know how they're going to get out of there. They don't know if they will. And that feeling of hopelessness, of loss, of being alone, and actually it's a physical pain that it hurts. They're suffering from it. And so that's why, and I'll put the links in the description, that please reach out, get help. There is a help out there, and we have so many brand new, exceptionally effective treatments. CBT, psychotherapy, there's new pharmacologies, new natural ways of going through being able to actually feel better. So please do not give up hope. There is help out there, and if you know someone or you yourself are going through that, please reach out to someone so that you can feel better as well. A lot of times when you're feeling this way, people don't know how to handle it, or they don't know what to say, and because you're suffering, they feel hopeless around because they can't actually do anything, because these are one of the things where reaching out to someone that is a professional in the field is just more effective. It has a greater chance of success, and there's many different modalities of help. Talk therapy is not effective for everyone. You want to find the thing that works for you. But don't give up hope. Help is out there.
I've already used up all my pee bottles, and so basically whenever I have to pee, I eat one of these meals and then I just pee in this bag and zip it up. I know that might be too much information. This challenge is disgusting and I want to leave.
But sometimes that's what we go through, are these really horrible times. And only showing the fun things of things wouldn't be honest or true. We all go through things, and a lot of times, especially when things are like produced to put out there, we put out the shiny, awesome ones, but that's not real life, right? Real life is not always shiny and sparkly and unicorns. It's also the dark places to that. And I think that that's much more real. And I think that we can have an understanding and more of a bond with people that are more honest about how they actually feel.
This dirt above me will turn into sunlight. I can't wait.
Oh, that's the excavator. Oh, that's scary. I can see sunlight. Hey! Jimmy! How's it going? It's hard to describe what the sun looks like after not seeing it for 7 days straight.
Oh my gosh.
I started crying once again. I'm not sure why, I just couldn't help it.
I'm sure that it was also that feeling of elation and happiness and kind of a release. Often we cry as that feeling of a release of all of these emotions that we've been held in, and that the end is near and you're gonna get to see your friends and everyone else around you again. So this was a little bit of the thoughts of the psychology to being buried alive and some of the things that people might go through in similar situations. If you really did like this or find it informative, you can please hit subscribe, or you could share the video so other people can see it. You can let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below.